Good morning, everyone. Good morning, honored guests, family, friends, and fellow partners in policymaking. My name is Audrey Evans, and I would like to thank Stacy and her team for selecting me to be part of this amazing class. I am part of the transition from high school to adulthood team. Today, our team will share some of the shortfalls and solutions we have found during our project. I am the foster and adoptive mom of an 11-year-old son named Nathan. This is my baby. This is my baby. Okay, he's a cutie pie. Nathan is dual diagnosed with cerebral palsy and autism. Nathan was not given a very good outcome for his future, but he has surpassed a lot of the negative things and milestones that he was said not to be able to do. Nathan uses a Tobii Dynabox to communicate. He has a passion for computers and technology. Time and time again, he has been underestimated in his capacity to learn and adapt. All children with an IEP or 504 plan should be given a transition plan that promotes their future success by giving them the needed training and support they need to become successful and productive members of our society. We are asking that starting at age 15 during the annual transition meeting, the school presents vocational rehab as a resource and highlight the services they provide for our children. We want this step to be documented on the IEP or 504 plan. Even though Florida statute states that students are required to receive this information, many families are not given the information. We need accountability and compliance from the school board. Other school districts in Oklahoma and Wisconsin are leading the way in this effort. I am here today to advocate for my child to get the needed information during his transition process for us to make an informed decision for his future. Vocational rehabilitation is a very important agency in the transition process. They can provide services for job training, support for college attendance, and much more. Nathan has the ability to learn and to do more than sit in an adult day center for 8 hours a day. His time could be better served in doing something fulfilling and helping others. I was amazed and disheartened to find out that vocational rehab had to return thousands of dollars provided by the state. These monies were not used to provide services and training to our children transitioning from high school. Transitioning from high school? Who does that? Give back money that could have allowed so many students to become productive members of their community. So my question today is, why has our school become a pipeline to adult day programs and not to training programs or the workforce or higher education and more independent services for our children with unique abilities? Keep in mind that this affects the parents as well as the children. We need vocational rehab and the other agencies who are part of the transition process to become compliant and accountable, so that starting at age 15 during the IEP or 504 meeting, their services are presented to families of children transitioning out of high school. And we can make an informed decision for our children's future. I would like to let my teammates tell you about their stories and comments and the important steps that transition from high school to adulthood makes. Thank you.
Thank you, Audrey. Good morning. My name is Deb Gregory from Ormond Beach, Florida. And hello and thank you to School Board Member Carl Persis from Volusia County for joining us today. My 11-year-old daughter has great dreams for her future, for college, for pursuing a career of her choosing. And I wonder if you remember your youthful dreams and the steps that you took. The transition from high school to independence is fraught with complexity for people with disabilities. Audrey talked about the pipeline to the adult daycare centers. Well, there's another alarming trend for students with disabilities. It's called the school to prison pipeline. Well, we want to see that these trends shift to a clear and supported pipeline to post-secondary education for those students who dream of going to college or pursuing a career of their choosing, like my daughter. Florida requires the IEP transition teams to include information about the transition process, but this essential step is not included on many IEP transition checklists. And many students and families are not properly informed about post-secondary education options and vocational rehabilitation services, like tuition assistance, assistive technology aids, transportation services, and job placement assistance. These are things that make post-secondary education a possibility. And it's also important to recognize that there's a lot of misinformation and confusion about what vocational rehabilitation services provides. That's why we need to get it into the hands of families. Why is this important? Well, a 2021 Bureau of Labor Statistics report revealed that of persons with disabilities who continue their education, who receive a bachelor's degree or higher, 73% are employed. Compare that with those who hold a high school education. Only 14% are employed. So that's a 58% increase in employment outcomes. And then a 2019 study of young adults with autism took into account the cost effectiveness of vocational rehabilitation services. And while the cost for pursuing post-secondary education is initially expensive, it is proven to be cost effective in the long run. Not only did employment rates increase, but the cost of vocational rehabilitation services dramatically decreased and even zeroed out over time after graduation. So it's clear that vocational rehabilitation services that support post-secondary education for persons with disabilities is an investment. This is why we propose following the example of other states like Wisconsin and Oklahoma and ensuring vocational rehabilitation and post-secondary information is included in the IEP and 504 transition meetings, and that parents sign an acknowledgement of receipt. This is a small step of no cost, but every step in the right direction counts for students like my daughter. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Melissa Arsenault, and I am a registered voter in Hernando County, Florida, and the proud mother to Ariel, a 15-year-old amazing girl with autism. Ariel just entered her freshman year of high school this fall, and every day suddenly I am thinking about her transition to adulthood and the challenges I know we will face in this changing world. Ariel's prospects for post-secondary education and career success as an adult have a much better chance of success with assistance from the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation. Vocational rehabilitation, as mentioned, can help students with disabilities explore and choose post-secondary education opportunities and career paths. Florida statute requires that information about school-based transition programs and services be provided to students and parents at all transition meetings. Referral forms, links, and contacts to these services should be consistently provided, but unfortunately this information is not always provided to everyone. A study conducted by the National Council on Disability revealed that 76% of states are in non-compliance regarding transition requirements for students with disabilities. That is a staggering number. Vocational rehabilitation must be presented as a resource during transition meetings because it is a critical piece of the transition IEP. Every single student graduating from high school in Florida must be informed about the VR process. We need every IEP and 504 plan in Florida to have a line to confirm that this student and parents have been informed about the VR process and the date that that information was provided. In essence, we are requesting compliance with existing Florida law related to transition planning for students like my daughter Ariel. Research has consistently shown us that individuals who participate in vocational rehabilitation have a higher rate of success in the post-secondary education and in employment. In 2016, research found that individuals receiving at least 3 types of VR support were 16 times more likely to gain employment. I think that is a staggering number, 16 times more likely with just the right support. I'd also like to mention, someone spoke earlier that in 2020, vocational rehabilitation gave back over $21 million in available funds. I'd like to stop for a second and think for all of us listening today what that funding could do for our children and people in the disability community if properly aligned with available resources. But there's perhaps no better argument for why we need to ensure this statute is enforced than a recent Florida Rehabilitation Council annual report. The report discovered in 2020-2021 fiscal year that for every $1 spent on vocational rehabilitation, an estimated $8.73 was returned to the Florida economy. That is a significant return on investment, as well as a true investment in the quality of life for those in Florida living with a disability. This goes back to that $21.5 million and making sure it never gets turned back over to the feds and the people in the state of Florida get to use that money for what it was marked for. Proper referral and use of vocational rehabilitation tools are life-changing for students like my daughter Ariel. She doesn't want anything extra and she doesn't want anything special. She just wants the same opportunities being provided to everyone else. Help us ensure that she and every student receive the tools that they need and the dignity they deserve, all while benefiting Florida's overall economic prosperity. Let's get that line item on every IEP and 504 plan in this state. It is a move that benefits everyone. Thank you for your time.
Hi, my name is Amy Armstrong. I live in Lutz, Florida, which is a part of Hillsborough County. So you may be asking yourself at this point in the presentation, I don't get it. What's the problem? The law is very clear. It says this conversation between schools and students and their families about vocational rehabilitation is supposed to happen, right? Well, let me help put this into perspective for you. We all know that it is the law to follow the speed limit, correct? How many of us do that though 100% of the time and are 100% precise on that speed limit? Now, how many more of us are more likely to do it when the Waze app tells us the police officer is up ahead with that radar, or we see that police officer in the distance, right? So in essence, what we are asking for here is a radar via that line item on the IEP, on the 504, that confirms we followed the law. If you have to check that box, you're more likely to follow the law. There's a quote that I like to try to live my life by, and it's, if it's important to you, you will find a way. If not, you'll find an excuse. And the research agrees. This collaboration between vocational rehabilitation and the schools, it is vital. It's vital to the success of these students with disabilities and their positive post-secondary outcomes. This research surveys special education teachers, it surveys vocational rehabilitation counselors, it does focus groups. And what they are saying is, hey, we agree, this is important. This is absolutely important. They also fully admit this doesn't happen. So what are their excuses? Well, let me tell you, lack of knowledge, lack of training on each other's roles. Basically, they say we don't understand what each other is doing here. So what do we need to help overcome that? Well, we need training, but there's lack of funds for the training, right? And then there's also the, of course, lack of time, that being the third excuse. We don't have time to collaborate with one another. So while we all agree that this conversation is important, these are the barriers getting in our way. So with these excuses being legitimate, right, I can admit that, what are we gonna do, right? Well, it's simple. We aim to empower those who this is the most important to, and that's the students with disabilities themselves and their families, because they're the ones that are less likely to find those excuses, right? Just like all of you have shared today. You guys are champions. you will do anything you can to be able to get through these excuses. That word empowerment leads me to the proverb, give a man a fish and he will eat for a day. Teach a man to fish and he will feed for a lifetime. I'm a mother of 3 children. My youngest is on the autism spectrum. I'm also the director at the Huntington Learning Center in North Tampa. And my role introduced me to 2 fishermen in training. We're going to call them Peter and Andrew. Peter is attending Hillsborough County High School. He's in his junior year, 2nd semester. And when I met with his mom, we're talking about planning for the ACT. I said, what is Peter's transition plan? And you would have thought that I would have spoken in another language. She didn't understand what I meant by transition plan. And we just established that's law. So why hasn't that conversation happened? Why is he a 2nd semester junior? And there's been no conversation of a transition plan to this point. And that's a devoted mother. Then I have another story of Andrew. Andrew is attending a private Catholic high school. His father is also very devoted. Now, Andrew's story is more positive. He does have a transition plan. They are working on post-secondary education for him. And in a conversation with Dad, I said, how are you planning to pay for college, right? He's not going to be a student that is eligible for a lot of different scholarships, like Bright Futures, which we know is big in Florida. He's not going to meet the criteria for that. And I said, have they brought up vocational rehabilitation and how that could potentially be the source that helps provide tuition assistance, not to mention assistance to him as he navigates college on his own. Dad wants him to live on his own. He had never heard that vocational rehabilitation could help his son. And these 2 fishermen in training, if all we did was give them the fishing rod by saying, hey, do you know that vocational rehabilitation could help support your plans post-high school? They get to become true fishermen. Someone who was given a fishing rod in high school is Ingrid Cupero. She's a success story cited by Rehab Works, where she gives credit to her high school counselor for introducing her to vocational rehabilitation. And furthermore, she gives credit to her voc rehab counselor for helping her actually graduate from college. She said if it wasn't for the voc rehab counselor, it never would have happened. And now she's a program coordinator for Telemundo. It's a powerful thing that fishing rod, by just giving it to someone, what that can lead to. Ingrid is one of 14 success stories featured on Rehab Works, and the only success story that gives credit to the high school for establishing that connection to vocational rehabilitation, and that's what we're trying to change. Shouldn't be the exception, it should be the norm.
Good morning. I would first like to start by thanking you for the opportunity to discuss the resolution to an increasing problem with our school special needs students and their futures upon graduation. My name is Leslie Hilton, and I'm a resident of Lake Alfred, a small town in Central Florida. I am the mother of an 8-year-old special needs student. I am also the instructional coach at a local high school, one that I personally attended. That high school is an example of the generational cycle that occurs throughout our state. Parents graduate, get jobs, and attain an income to provide a reasonable lifestyle for themselves and their children. Their children then attend the high school the same as their parents, and then follow in the footsteps of their parents' occupation. Unfortunately, our economy doesn't allow for the same lifestyle that they are accustomed to from their parents in the same profession. I would like to share a story that will always hold a special place in my heart. 4 years ago, Brandon enrolled in our high school intellectual disability unit. Through tons of support and interventions from all stakeholders, Brandon and other students in the unit began attending general education classrooms. They started small with elective classes their freshman year. Then each year, we added other core classes to their schedules. During Brandon's junior year, he enrolled in the U.S. history class. At the end of this course, all students are required to complete a state-administered end-of-course exam. Brandon is one of the handful of students in the state of Florida that obtained a perfect score on this exam. When asked Brandon always stated that he aspired to be a history teacher. Recently, I asked him if he was making plans for graduation to become that history teacher that he always desired to be. Brandon's response was a chuckle and loudly replied, "No, my parents don't have money for that. I'm gonna get a job at Walmart like my sister." His sister is also a recent special needs graduate from my school. This is just one example of the missed opportunity that not only this student, but ultimately for the future of our society. As you have heard from my colleagues, vocational rehabilitation can help increase the incomes and the livelihood for all. It is a small ripple into creating a wave of a higher employment rate for our state. Knowledge is power, and with the legal requirement of vocational rehabilitation awareness in transitional meetings, with just a simple check mark on the IEP forms, knowledge will spread. As Kofi Annan once said, knowledge is power. Information is liberating, and education is the premise for progress. Let's start today by reinforcing that progress with the mandate of the discussion of vocational rehab, as well as the required date and signature by parents in all transitional meetings for students of the ages of 15 and above in the state of Florida.